Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session on Spring Summer OSAP at Ryerson. My name's Andrea. My pronouns are she, her, and I will be your room host for today. A few Zoom housekeeping tips. So this is a webinar. It is being recorded, and you will have access to the recording about 24 to 48 hours after the session, so you can refer to it. So don't worry if your Wi-Fi goes out. You will have the slides and the information in that recording. You can rearrange the screen in any way that you like, and it won't affect how anyone else is viewing it. To communicate with us, if you have any Wi-Fi issues, if you have any questions about the content, please use the Q&A pod that is located at the bottom of your screen. You can go there, ask any questions, and we will be able to answer that. As there's a lot of you here, there might be a while before we answer questions, so don't worry if your question isn't getting answered right away. We will get to it shortly. Now I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. So even though we're joining virtually, and some of us from different parts of the world or the country, it's still important for Ryerson that we do the land acknowledgement, as it's a recognition of the context that we are in historically and the work that we still need to do towards truth and reconciliation. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. And on that note, I would now like to welcome Carly, our presenter for today's session, who will take it from here. Passing the virtual mic over to you, Carly.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me and my colleagues and student financial assistants today to talk about Spring Summer OSAP. First, we're going to go over the agenda so you can have a sense of what we're going to be discussing today. And again, as Andrea has said, please use the Q&A if you would like to have any of your questions answered throughout this presentation, and we will be sticking around at the end for more questions. I'll first start off by introducing who I am. Then we're going to get into full-time and part-time OSAP for spring summer. So we'll talk a little bit about how to apply for OSAP if you're planning on taking spring summer courses, the application process, the minimum course load you need to access either full-time funding or part-time funding, as well as how funding is released to you. We'll then talk a little bit about how our office will communicate to you throughout the spring summer for updates about your OSAP application. And then most importantly, deadline dates, because they are coming up sooner than we expect, I'm sure. And we want to make sure that you're prepared to get that application in without missing any deadlines. So to introduce who I am, my name is Carly, and I have the privilege of managing the financial assistance team here at Ryerson University. I'm also a proud Ryerson alum. I'm a graduate from the Faculty of Arts Psychology program. I actually haven't added this yet, but I also just graduated from the Ching School with a certificate in organizational leadership. And I also have my master's of teaching from the University of Toronto. While I'm not busy at work, I love to bake, watch cooking shows, and I like to dabble in some photography as well. So to get started, I'm going to talk a little bit about full-time OSAP for the spring-summer term. So if you're coming to school at Ryerson for the spring-summer, you will apply for full-time OSAP in one of two ways, depending if you have already received full-time OSAP this academic year. If you have already received full-time OSAP for either the fall 2020 term and or the winter 2021 term, what you're going to do is submit an OSAP spring summer extension form, which is available right on our website. We'll get into a little bit more detail about what the extension form is and how to apply in a couple of slides. If you have not yet applied for full-time OSAP this year, so whether you haven't applied for OSAP at all this year, or if you've only accessed part-time OSAP funding, what you're going to do is submit a brand new full-time OSAP application directly on the OSAP website, which again, we'll go over some details in a couple of slides so you know how to do that as well. So, spring summer OSAP extension, this is the process that you will follow and the steps that we take to ensure that we get your funding to you. So first, you're going to make sure that you're actually registered in courses. If you have taken a look at our extension form already, you'll notice that one of the requirements to submit an extension is that you have to already be in your courses and hopefully have those courses finalized for the spring-summer term. So once you've registered in your courses, you're then going to submit an OSAP spring-summer extension form, which again is available on our website. It is a Google form. Once you apply, our office will verify that all the details that you provided are matching and will update your OSAP application accordingly. And what you'll notice once we process your extension, usually within 3 to 6 weeks from the time that you submit it, you'll notice that on your current full-time OSAP application for this academic year, we'll have a study period added that covers the spring-summer term and the dates that you're taking courses throughout. So that will appear on your OSAP account once we have gone ahead and processed your extension. You'll also notice that your funding assessment will be updated as well, and you'll get a sense of how much funding you're due to receive, assuming that you maintain the same course load that you're currently registered in. An important thing to note is that we cannot actually release your spring-summer funding to you until the beginning of school. So the OSAP system actually will not allow us to release funding before school starts. So most students will end up taking courses starting around early May. So for many of you who are taking spring-summer courses, you'll get your there aren't two disbursements. You'll get your funding disbursement for the whole spring-summer term, usually around the beginning of May. And if you're only taking courses that start in June or July, your funding will be released around June, July as well. If you're applying for full-time OSAP for the first time this year, you're going to be submitting a brand new full-time OSAP application and not an extension form. The process is quite similar to the full-time spring-summer extension, but just to let you know what the differences are, I'll go through the steps for this as well. So as well, we're asking you to please make sure that you're finalizing your courses. And the reason why we want you to finalize those courses is that if you make any changes to your course load after we process your application, it can cause delays to your funding or issues with your funding. So once you finalize your spring-summer courses, you're going to head on to ontario.ca/OSAP. That's the OSAP website. And you're going to create a brand new full-time OSAP application for the spring-summer term. When you search for your program, there are specific program names for the spring-summer term. So just make sure that you're looking for the spring-summer version of your program. Then once the application is in, you submit all required documents, the regular pathway that you would for a full-time application that's brand new. We will then go ahead and verify again that your information that you're submitting is matching your student record on RAMS. And then once that happens, you'll get your assessment, and around the beginning of class, similar to the extension form, you will then get your funding for the spring-summer term. A really important thing to note, though, that is different from the full-time OSAP application and the full-time extension is that if you are applying for OSAP for the first time this year as a full-time student and you're submitting a brand new full-time OSAP application for the spring-summer term, you have to be registered in a minimum of 12 weeks of courses. So what that usually means is that you're taking a full-time course load that spans from May to end of July or early August. If you do not take courses that span over 12 weeks, so for example, perhaps you've only registered for spring courses that run typically from May to June, or if you're taking summer only classes, which run from June to July or June to August, you're not going to be in 12 weeks of study, and the OSAP system cannot allow us to process an application that is less than 12 weeks in length. So if you are in this situation where you're planning on applying for a full-time OSAP for the first time this academic year, please make sure that you're taking a full-time course load that spans over May through end of July at the minimum, so that way you can get funding. Otherwise, you will not qualify for OSAP funding. Your study period must be a minimum of 12 weeks in length. But again, this does not apply to OSAP extension students. So if you are only taking courses for spring or summer as a student receiving OSAP through an extension, this does not apply. This is only for brand new full-time OSAP applicants. So now I'm going to talk about part-time spring-summer OSAP eligibility. So if you're taking a part-time course load, which is usually 1 to 2 courses, you need to apply for a brand new part-time OSAP application. Even if you've applied for part-time funding this year, or even full-time funding, students who are receiving part-time OSAP do need to reapply every single semester. So you will need to go into the OSAP website, again, which is ontario.ca/OSAP, to create a brand new part-time OSAP application. And we do have information as well as the direct link to the OSAP website on our Student Financial Assistance Spring Summer OSAP page. The processing of a part-time OSAP application for spring summer is incredibly similar to what I just described, so I'm not going to go into this in too much detail. But again, to summarize, you're going to register in your courses, you're going to submit a brand new part-time OSAP application on the OSAP website, ontario.ca/OSAP. We're going to verify that you're in courses and that all of your supporting documents and anything else needed is submitted and approved. We will update your file if needed, if any changes did occur. You'll get your funding assessment, and then close to the start of your studies, you will get your funding released to you or to Ryerson if you owe tuition. So same thing as a full-time OSAP applicant through an extension or a brand new application. So now I'm going to talk about some important tips and general information, regardless if you're applying for full-time OSAP or part-time OSAP. I cannot stress this enough because I know this can be very confusing, that funding will not be released to you before classes start. OSAP funding will first be sent to RAMS if you owe any tuition, and if you don't have any tuition left to pay, or if your OSAP funding is greater than the amount you have owing to Ryerson, that funding will be sent to your bank account directly. Given that the vast majority of students who are taking spring summer courses are taking it through the Chang School, it is very important to note that Chang School fees, unfortunately, are due upon enrollment. So what that means is that if you do not have the means to pay your tuition right away, you will be responsible for covering any late fees incurred. So again, we can't release funding to you early to cover those tuition costs. If you do have the means and are in a position where you can pay your Chang School tuition costs right away, that will not have an impact on your OSAP funding. And what will happen is, assuming that you'll be eligible for OSAP, if you don't have any tuition fees owing, that will just be sent to your bank account. So that is completely up to you to decide. If you do want to pay for your Chang School courses right away to not incur late fees, you're welcome to do so. But if you have to wait for OSAP to come, just note that you will be charged late fees next month, April. No late fees are charged in May across the university, and hopefully you'll have your funding by May. So you are responsible for 1 month of late fees, which is 1.25% of whatever fees you have outstanding on your account. We'll get into deadlines next, but it's very important to pay attention to your deadline date. For spring summer OSAP for both full-time and part-time, we determine the deadline dates for your application depending on when your courses end. So we have a whole chart on our website, which again, I'll go through with you to determine what your deadline date is. Spring summer is a very busy time for us, as I'm sure you're all aware. So we do kindly ask to just wait at least 3 to 6 weeks for us to process your extension or your part-time OSAP application or brand new full-time OSAP application from the time that you submit it. We are furiously working away. We get usually over 5,000 applications between full-time and part-time throughout spring summer. So we will be furiously working away and hoping to get funding out to you as soon as possible. Just note that if you do add or drop classes before the spring summer term starts, we get that happens, circumstances change, and you have a change of plans. We will make those adjustments for you. There's no need to notify our office, but please do note that that might cause a delay in getting funding out to you, because any changes to your course load after we have already processed your application means we need to go back into your application and make those changes manually. There isn't a way for us to do it automatically with spring summer. So we just want to let you know that there may be slight delays if changes to your course load do occur. And speaking of the topic of course load changes, if we have already released your funding to you this spring summer and you decide to drop courses, we just want you to keep in mind that there may be some implications, including OSAP academic probation. So just to be aware of that, I'm not going to go into detail with that today because we won't have enough time, but we do have a whole website dedicated to explain what OSAP academic probation is. We will be sending all the links associated with this presentation to you afterwards, but we do have a full website that explains what that is, and we encourage you to take a look at that information before dropping classes in any semester, not just for spring summer. In terms of communication, we will be communicating with you throughout the next few weeks. Once we get your application, you'll get notified once your extension has been processed or your part-time application has been processed. And if there are any sort of issues or any confusion about your application, our office heavily leverages the OSAP Communications Center. So as an OSAP applicant, you have a whole communications portal, and that is how our office communicates with students most frequently. And on this communication portal, you'll get updates about your application status, your funding breakdown, as well as any direct communications from our office, student financial assistance at Ryerson, as well as the ministry if you are submitting any appeals, for example. So we encourage you to please monitor your communication center on a regular basis, so that way you don't miss out on any sort of steps that you need to take to ensure that your application is complete. I already know that I've talked about course load changes, but I really want to drill this point home so you have a full understanding of the impacts of adding or dropping classes on your OSAP application for spring summer. We really do encourage students to please finalize your course load before submitting an extension or part-time application. We understand sometimes it's really hard to know this early on in the winter term what's going to be for next term, but it actually causes further delays for processing if students are constantly making adjustments to their course load after we've processed their application. So if you can kindly hold off if you're still not for sure about how many courses you're planning on taking. Again, on average, we do process 3 to 6 weeks turnaround time. So the more finalized you are with your course load, the better it is for us to make sure we can get funding out to you as soon as possible without making a bunch of changes to your application. Another important thing to note about course load, we often get this question from students, is that intensive courses, which usually run 1 to 2 weeks, cannot actually be used to calculate your course load. So for OSAP policy purposes, students have to be taking courses that are minimum 2 weeks in length for it to count towards your course load. So if you are planning on taking intensive courses, note that we can add the cost of your intensive courses and will add the cost of the intensive courses to your assessment, as long as you're also taking regular full-length courses on top of that. But if you're only planning on taking intensive courses for spring summer, unfortunately, that does not qualify for OSAP eligibility. So you will need to take regular courses in addition to intensive courses for you to receive funding for those intensive courses. So deadline dates, again, as I mentioned, we have a whole table on our Spring Summer OSAP website that outlines in detail which type of application to use and the deadline date, depending on the types of courses you're taking, as well as their end dates. So we strongly encourage you to check out our website, the Spring Summer OSAP page, and it will give you a full guide as to what your deadline date is based upon the end dates of the courses that you're taking. There are numerous end dates for students. There's also unique ones for students who are only taking science and engineering transition courses. So just make sure that you check out all the different scenarios to find the one that best suits your situation to determine what your deadline date is. And that brings us to the end of my presentation. Again, there's a lot of great content on our website, as well as the OSAP website, to provide you with a little bit more guidance in terms of how to apply for spring summer OSAP and OSAP in general. But I really hope that this was helpful for you. We will be sticking around until 2 o'clock to answer your questions. So I do encourage you, I see we have currently 69 questions in queue, so there's a few of us working behind the scenes to get those questions answered. So please bear with us, we will get to you. So stick around for your answers, and thank you so much for joining us today. Wishing you all the best with the rest of your winter term and a really successful spring summer semester as well. Take care, everyone.